And we are live with Todd Callender and Dr. Pete Chambers. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us tonight. I just want to mention before we start, today is actually a live day for Dr. Chambers. Amongst combat veterans, it represents the day that they nearly died but didn't. The 12th of May 2004 in Iraq, he lost his good friend, Sergeant Jeff Shaver, who actually died right next to him, saving his life and losing his. So we just want to remember Sergeant Jeff Shaver and all of those who've served, and the US and Australia have been allies for a very long time. So we thank you for your service as well, Dr. Chambers.
Yes, ma'am. You know, you're worth it. And Jeff reminds me of that every day. I wear his bracelet on my wrist, and his mom and I had a great conversation. She had the same smile he did, and I saw where his love for humanity came from. So I always remember that, the good stuff.
The good stuff. Dr. Chambers, actually, he said to me, he doesn't sleep on a live day. This is an important day for him. So I thought it's crucial that we start with that. Now, Todd has sent me some information, which I think, the whole world needs to know about this WHO pandemic treaty, but it goes far beyond that. We're talking about the next pandemic. We're talking about how humanity is going to battle this, how we're going to get through this, how we're going to stop this. This pandemic treaty is the most alarming thing thus far that I have seen. It is aiming to supersede every country's constitution. It's going to completely remove our sovereignty, and it is very, very alarming. But Todd, you're saying that you feel that the next pandemic is very possibly going to be Marburg. You've been speaking about this for some time, and we have some evidence for that. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's almost a certainty, in so much that if you look at how this whole thing was created through public health, in 2005, the world's nations got together and agreed the international health regulations, a matrix, a means by which everybody would cooperate, nations, in the case of a global health pandemic. And of course, we had, according to Secretary Pompeo, a live exercise called COVID, right? With less than a 1% chance of dying from this thing, if that. And yet everybody locked down the whole world and already removed people's constitutional rights by locking them in their houses, closing their businesses, and forcing them to wear face diapers. We've already seen what this is. There are Marburg provisions in that particular piece of law. It's 42 CFR Part 70 and 71 that authorizes our health apparatus in the United States, the federal one, to effectively suspend the Constitution and supplant it with their own rules. That already happened. That happened in March of 2020. We're operating under that very law right now because the quote-unquote emergency still exists. The Marburg provisions of the PrEP Act also exist and were also already invoked, meaning that our Congress and Health and Human Services already found there's a Marburg pandemic when I haven't heard about a Marburg pandemic. I don't know anything about one. However, they spent the money, they built quarantine camps, and they're training people across the United States of America, I assume in every country, on how to collect, isolate, and quarantine people with Marburg. We see 400 million people are locked up in China. It wasn't by coincidence that in the Winter Olympics, they had hantavirus, a form of hemorrhagic fever like Marburg. And now you got 400 people starving to death in their homes under those same WHO-style martial law provisions. It is with very little coincidence that now we have 22nd of March, the WHO convening this, this grand convention whereby all of the world's nations, effectively 194 of them anyway, are going to sign over their sovereignty to the WHO, in so much as when the director of the WHO, on mere suspicion alone, says there's an infectious disease that could spread, they will be in charge of that country and they will be in charge of that planet. And our countries are giving them that power voluntarily.
Sorry, Todd, I'm just getting a little bit of feedback. Yeah. I don't know if it's on your end or Dr. Chambers' end, if maybe the volume needs to be turned down a little bit. I just brought up this PrEP Act that you were talking about, Notice of Declaration under the Public Readiness and Emergency Preparedness Act for countermeasures against Marburg virus and or Marburg disease. But that's not the only reason that we're looking at this. We've also got most agencies in the US have to be NIMS or NIST compliant, or have run zombie apocalypse exercises. Now, I know I know that this sounds out there for the audience. I know that zombie apocalypse sounds ridiculous, but we can't ignore that the CDC had a zombie preparedness section on their website, which they say started off as a joke, yet they continued to elaborate on it and create resources. It seems very strange.
Well, for 4 years, they didn't say it was a joke. They had it up on their webpage, Zombie Apocalypse Preparedness. For 4 years, they never said it was a joke. It was only when people started discovering it that they put it into a PDF format and said it was a joke.
Yeah. Yes. There's also, we saw the thing on Amazon Web Services. I don't have the link that I can bring up at the moment, but they do have a section about zombies in their terms and conditions. These things are not coincidence.
They're not. And by the way, sorry, Maria, I was going to say, and by the way, we use the word zombie only in so much as it describes behavior. So now we are finding that, for instance, in the military, pilots can't reason enough to actually fly the aircraft. They're losing their frontal cortex, and there's evidence to suggest that it's a gene deletion issue that they're having, whether it's the 1p36 or a variety of other genes that are causing the atrophy of their frontal cortex. How do we describe a zombie? Somebody who is unthinking, wandering around. This is precisely the kind of behavior that we're using when we use that word. We've all seen zombie movies, people running around and biting and whatnot. It happens to match the symptomology of the 1p36 gene deletion, which was the number one serious adverse event experienced from Pfizer participants in the clinical trials.
I've got up here the presentation from Dr. Ariana Love. The WHO and CDC confirmed variants caused by gene deletion and mutation. The US Army, this is from January that she updated it, just announced their new creation of a spike ferritin nanoparticle vaccine, claiming that it works against all variants, so on and so forth. But this is this confirms gene deletion. They have confirmed that this is the case. It replaces genes. Now, the reason why this argument also holds weight, Dr. Lee Merritt and Mike Adams recently did an interview where they spoke about this technology that's inside of people, this nanotechnology, that there is definitely advanced technology that's able to mind control. So when we say zombie, we're not talking about the traditional sense of zombies necessarily. Although if that was paired with a hemorrhagic fever, it may look like something like that.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. And it's just a nice word. Everybody knows what that means. And I understand the cognitive dissonance. They can't believe what they see in a movie is something that's happening. It is happening. It's already happening. So it may not be that there's a zombie breakout at this particular moment, everybody goes nuts, but you can see the progression of people's loss of their cognitive ability. They're easily angered. The only thing we haven't seen yet is fits of biting, but that did happen some years ago. There are people literally chewing off the faces of others in South Florida. So we have every reason to believe that this is happening. And by the way, it's not like we can act that we don't know, that we wouldn't believe this to be the case. Like I said, there are already 400 million people locked in their homes and starving in China. Why would we not believe them when they went to the trouble to write this stuff down? They went to the trouble of patenting these technologies. They went to the trouble of putting this in shots in the world's biggest experiment ever, the world's largest genetic therapy experiment ever. Why would we not believe?
I have a question for Dr. Chambers, actually, because you are...
Yes, Maria.
We're talking about your military experience here, your military knowledge. I have unconfirmed intel. I want to state very clearly that this is unconfirmed intel, but that basically the past 2 years of Operation Lockstep was the test run for Operation Lockstep, and they have Operation Lockstep Live coming, and that Shanghai is a trial run for Operation Lockstep Live, which ties into the WHO pandemic treaty. What we're seeing in Shanghai is what we'll see in the whole world. Does this sound plausible to you, Dr. Chambers?
So I'll give you my opinion. This is my opinion, and it's based on my reading, my assumptions, and open source. I'm not speaking for the Department of Defense or the Texas Military Department, of which I have 1 month left to go out of 39 years. Yes, without a shadow of a doubt, this is what I believe. And let's look back at 2018, and it's really a really interesting demarcation. And before that, 2015. But in 2018, in my bio weapons handbooks, just from what we carry, special operations. My last one was in 2008. There were treatments for Marburg. There were treatments for hemorrhagic in there that included things like albendazole and things that exist, ivermectin. some other things. And there are studies that prove this. In 2018, those books changed, and they went to only an mRNA vaccine as the treatment.
Right.
So other lesser intrusive means are gone, and now we're only looking at the one option, which is a vaccine. So it's concerning. The other thing too is if you want to mimic these symptoms, I can pump up a 5G network. I can put people like we've talked about Canberra, what's happened there, and we can turn symptoms up until we essentially fry people. But these symptoms can be very much like a radiologic side effects, be it from microwave or any sort of EMF. So, and then we can also talk about the chimeric release that's carried by the lipid nanoparticles into the cell, and what does that release? And we have, patents, and Todd Callender is extremely versed in this, well versed, and supplied us with the information on patents that prove this.
There's been some criticism of the Daigle data. I want to hear from you, Dr. Chambers. Is this reliable data? The Daigle forecasts of population reduction.
Okay, I can't say that I've confirmed that. I always like to verify by confirming it. I can say that it makes sense, but I couldn't verify that for you.
Okay.
I've seen that, but I haven't had the time to.
Yes, I mean, I've shared this data before. What the audience, what you're seeing right now is the Daigle 2025 forecast by country. Mm-hmm. We're seeing a huge forecast of population change or reduction in population. United Kingdom down 77%, Ireland down 72%, United States 68%. And it makes sense that they would do this with their bioweapon. It certainly makes sense that
it corroborates it. Yeah, it corroborates empirically, and what I'm seeing when I talk to people in the insurance business. Of course, Todd is very much well versed in that, and then also in the local mortuaries. It's overwhelming. We can't even get autopsies anymore
because of how many dead bodies there are. Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, Maria. I was just going to say governments have been relying on Daigle for decades, many decades. Daigle was an assistant secretary of defense, if memory serves, and built this whole thing as a statistical study that governments would rely upon as to whether it was population, gross domestic product, or even weapons countries had. I mean, it's a very comprehensive database. And if governments are relying upon that to make their plans, then I think we should probably take it seriously too.
Well, I think it certainly makes sense. If you look at the fact that in the animal trials, so many animals died with the mRNA trials, and then there were longer lasting effects. We've had multiple experts across the world saying that those who've been injected have a maximum of 2, maybe 3 years. We're approaching the 18-month mark later this year. It just so happens to coincide with when the World Health Organization wants to bring in this treaty. It could be a combination, and I'm theorizing here, but it could be a combination of those people that now have vaccine-induced autoimmune deficiency syndrome, VAIDS, their immune systems not being able to fight off common colds. And we've already seen Biden said to the United States, 100 million people are going to be suffering this fall. How do you even know that, Biden?
He was going to Daigle.
Well, yes. Then in Australia, we've been told that we're going to have problems with flurona, a combination of coronavirus and the flu.
Yeah, they're telling us.
Because, yes, they're telling us clearly. And so we've got a problem in winter. You've got a problem in fall. I wonder who's got a problem in summer, what they're going to come up with for that. But they're clearly telling us that there will be mass sickness and we think possibly death. Go on, Dr. Chambers.
Yes, ma'am. And let's look at the simple solution here, just something that people can do if we get to the stage where it's nutraceuticals that can really stave off a lot of this. And it's just a matter of sunlight. It's just a matter of sunlight for some of this. I'm not saying it's the only answer, but vitamin D especially. But this concerns me in our legislation right now. There's a Republican and a Democrat that have paired up to control the distribution of something that's been very safe, which is nutraceuticals, vitamins. Brits say vitamins. But this is concern.
We were actually just talking about this. I was doing a live stream just not long before we got on together, and I was talking about Codex Alimentarius. A lot of people don't know about this. This is something that aims to restrict the nutrients, treat them as toxins, restrict the amount of nutrients in your food, and also increase the amount of toxins to what they deem a safe level, which is actually lethal to most humans. This is a document that's existed for years upon decades, and this is how they're doing all of this. They're restricting our nutrients. They want us sick and dead.
Right.
Yeah. Why wouldn't we believe them? They actually wrote that down in Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. They got to get that zero. That number has got to be down to zero. That's what Bill Gates is telling us. He talks about reducing the population. It's not just him. A lot of them. The Good Club, right? Warren Buffett, right. Oprah. They all got together and agreed that we have to reduce the population. In 1990, the Cairo Accords, all of our governments got together, 190 of them, who said we've got to reduce the world's population by 95%. Why is it that we can't believe them when they tell us this stuff? They write it down, they act, they have contracts, they have, treaties. Why would we not believe this? The question is, what are we going to do about it?
Correct, and we will get to that, but we just had the United Nations and the World Economic Forum sign to accelerate Agenda 2030 to Agenda 2023. So it's all lining up with their plans, all of the timelines with these new treaties and global agreements that they're signing. It is well on track for the one world government, new world order. So let's talk about what we can do. Actually, I just want to cover quickly, Todd and Dr. Chambers, if that's okay. You sent me this FEMA to evaluate the readiness of the state of Delaware. What's this about?
I don't know if that was the one that I had sent, but this is, again, part of this training exercise that ends in mid-July. It's where FEMA and Homeland Security are practicing urban and rural collection, isolation, and quarantining. So the money from the Marburg PrEP Act was actually spent on building quarantine centers that house a combination of law enforcement, public health, corrections, and the judiciary. They effectively replace the traditional notions of government we have in one center. And so they are training people, in the case of a declared public health emergency, how to go and grab people and bring them to the quarantine center, where their new rights will be established, not their constitutional rights. That's what this training is about.
All right.
Unbelievable. We've also
we've seen the same.
It ends, by the way, and it ends in mid-July. Now, our government has a habit of carrying out operations right in the middle of an exercise. I don't know if that happens with your government, but my expectation is that there will be this mysterious and magical Marburg outbreak in mid-July. And as Dr. Chambers appropriately said, all of this can be done through electromagnetic radiation, EMF from the 5G networks, which were installed across the world while everybody was locked in their houses. The people setting up those towers on every single public schoolhouse, right? Every building that houses school kids had those installed as essential workers while we were all locked up. Why?
Mm-hmm.
We've also got the section 2.13 isolation and quarantine procedures. This was updated on the 22nd of April. This is New York. So another one. The same sort of thing, really, focusing on updating their quarantine requirements. They're really showing us here what they're going to do, what they're planning. People thought lockdowns were over. Again, Shanghai 2.0, but global.
That's right.
A secret training facility for Victoria's elite police squads has been described as a law and order game changer. The $60 million centre helps our top police prepare to take on the most dangerous criminals.
These are some of Victoria's toughest police officers. Brave and highly skilled. Now, the Special Operations Group, the Critical Incident Response Team and the Bomb Response Unit have a new training facility worth almost $60 million, the state government investing more than $33 million. Our top cop describing it as the best in Australia.
They can come here and train in what is a world-class facility. For us, it's a game changer, it really is.
Previously, where we had to travel interstate and overseas to maintain our mandatory skill sets, This facility means that we don't have to spend time travelling.
7 News was invited behind the scenes to see just how advanced the training is. A facility so top secret, we can't reveal the location. Here, members from the SOG are training as though there's an active shooter inside a major Melbourne shopping centre or down Burke Street Mall, preparing for the very worst.
The reality is the counter-terrorism threat hasn't gone away.
Officers, both men and women from the Critical Incident Response Team, train here, so they're ready to face the most dangerous criminals.
What we will ensure through this facility is that we have the best trained, the best equipped police officers in the country.
And then it gives the operators opportunity to work on their tactics, techniques and procedures.
So I really just looked up to the crew at CERT and the jobs they do and the work they do. I guess the name they have within the organisation, they're pretty well respected.
Although this is a training drill, it's real life situations like this that our most elite operators often face. In this situation, the priority is to get the hostages out safely.
The best of the best train here, and they will be training at that level to ensure they are the best of the best.
A message to women considering joining the CERT team.
Just have a crack, like you've got nothing to lose.
Cassie Zervos, 7 News.
They lie, the men who tell us, for reasons of their own. Want is here a stranger, misery's unknown. Where the nearest suburb and the city proper meet, high windowsill is level with the faces in the street. Drifting past to the beat of weary feet. I sorrow for the owners of the faces in the street, and cause I have to sorrow in a land so young and fair. See upon those faces the marks of wanton care, and I look in vain for traces of the fresh and fair and sweet, in the sallow sunken faces that are drifting through the street. Drifting on to the scrape of restless feet. I sorrow for the owners of the faces in the street. And I wonder, would the apathy of wealthy men endure, for all their windows level with the faces of the poor? Our mammon's slaves, in these shall not your hearts in terror beat, when your God demands a reason for the sorrows of the street. The wrong things and the bad things, and the sad things that we meet in the filthy lane and alley, and the cruel and heartless street. And I cried, oh God Almighty, if thy might does still endure, now show me in a vision for the wrongs of earth the cure. And lo, with shops all shuttered, I saw a city street, and in the warning distance heard the tramp of many feet. Pouring on to a drum's loud threatening beat, and the war hymns and the cheering of the people in the street. shall ride in vain. The warning voice grow hoarse, and kindle eyes all blazing bright. Revolution's heat, and flashing swords reflecting rigid faces in the street. Coming near, with drums dull distant beat.